This is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Dig on America, where we speak truth to power. Every week, we give you the dig on how American history, policies, and media created the social and political issues we face today. DOA is independent media supported by listeners, but they'll tell you we're just fake news, deep state propaganda, funded by George Soros, the Clinton Foundation, BLM Marxists, and
NFL referees.
Oh, NFL referees for sure. Yeah. Any pop culture or actor do you think might be sponsoring the show today, Caleb?
Oh, I think the ghost of Mao Zedong's come back. I can hear him speaking Chinese in my ear right now, just being like,
it's the Chinese. We always know it's the Chinese. It's always the Chinese. And by the way, tomorrow, season finale of Peacemaker. I win the t-shirt game
Today.
again.
Today.
Topic.
Let me give the white man the big screen during Black History Month. Go ahead.
This week, yes, the Great Migration. So now, my 8th grade social studies teacher,
Mr. Humble,
taught me things that turns out after doing my own research wasn't exactly the whole story. And this week, we'll dive into the topic of the Great Migration. So as I go through this, anyone who wants to pause me can just yell out pause, and then we'll talk about how this affects us today. That was a fake pause, sir. History books describe the Great Migration as approximately this: the widespread migration of African Americans in the 20th century from rural communities, where Pablo was, into the South, or in the South, to large cities in the North and the West.
Pause. Can I pause the thing and poll the panel? Can we guess which major cities they are? Because I have like 5 in mind, and I want to foreshadow where Dutch is going to go with where those migrations.
Good idea. Up. Where are the migrations? Give us one each.
Number one, I'm going to say St. Louis.
Haas.
Chicago.
Caleb.
Write them down.
oh man, Chicago was mine.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say San Francisco.
San Francisco and Paulo.
Did somebody say New York already?
Not yet. You
Right,
just
New York.
did.
Are we ready for round 2?
Can I
I'm ready
change?
for round 2.
Can I change mine? Actually, I'm changing mine to Cleveland.
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to put on my second one.
Mm-hmm.
Milwaukee.
Okay. Double points. Big Haas. As Paulo drops his.
As he calls the bad boys out to play.
Listen, I used to work at a bar. Paulo, you're cut off. No more. No more.
Guys, I'm great.
Cider.
He just took the can. He took the empty can and slammed it on the ground. It was like bullseye.
You could have at least crushed it against your head or something.
I want to say for some reason I get the feeling Minneapolis.
Would anyone like me to name the cities we've already listed to help out with further?
I remember what they are, and there's 3 that are not listed.
Okay, so I'll say them again. The ones that we've covered so far are St. Louis, Chicago, San Francisco, New York, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Cleveland, and now Paulo.
Cincinnati.
Oh, can I make one more guess?
Yeah. I'm giving you a second round of guesses.
Oh,
you can guess all of them.
Memphis. That
God
was one
damn
of
it.
mine.
That was my next one because that's where all my family's from. Damn it.
All right. So add Memphis. This is interesting trivia. And did Caleb give 2?
Everyone did 2.
Okay. I didn't hear Caleb's second one. So
Caleb's second one was Cleveland.
Okay. All right. So
Detroit.
Now,
Fuck Detroit.
The answer to all of those is probably yes, but and it will be actually part of this exact sentence here. So I'll just start the paragraph at the beginning for those who have short memory spans. History books describe the Great Migration as approximately this: the widespread migration of African Americans in the 20th century from rural communities in the South to large cities in the North and the West. At the turn of the 20th century, the vast majority of Black Americans lived in the southern states. From 1916 to 1970, during this Great Migration, it is estimated that some 6+ million Black Southerners relocated to urban areas in the North and West. European immigration waned during World War I due to immigration reform in the 1920s, which was very racist, by the way, also. As a result, urban industries were faced with huge labor shortages, kind of like we see today. A huge internal population shift among African Americans addressed these shortfalls to fill that industry's need, because industries required more, quote, unskilled labor.
Pause. There was a pause.
Pause.
I wanted to pause, but I'm not going to pause because I was going to add another city that I totally forgot about. You're probably going
That's
to
a good pause.
Gary, Indiana.
Okay, you're getting a little bit small for it to be mentioned, but that would be adjacent to one of the cities. So promised, while being promised with higher wages than those that these Black Americans could earn via sharecropping, which we talked about last week, or farming in the South, over 6 million, or housekeeping, over 6 million Black families migrated to Chicago, New York, Cleveland, Los Angeles, Detroit,
got it,
and other large industrial centers over the next 6 decades. I highly doubt any of you were wrong, except maybe Memphis, because technically that's already in the South to a degree. Depends on where you draw that line. Escaping Jim Crow laws and black codes implemented in the southern states after Reconstruction was another main reason for the migration. And by the way, I got most of this initial couple paragraphs from a site called Duckster, which is a site for little kids' history. So I want you to pay attention to how it ends. And we're going to talk more about this site.
Lives happily ever at. Oh, never mind.
In the South, African Americans began to organize, protest, and fight segregation. In 1954, the Supreme Court said that segregation of the schools was illegal, and in the Brown versus Board of Education case. Protests brought the issue of Jim Crow to national attention until they were made illegal with the passage of federal laws in 1964 and 1965. And that's where Duxter kind of ends it. So if you listen to the history books, but that's not where the Great Migration ends. So at the risk of being banned for teaching CRT, we move on
Cancel
with more
him.
history. Cancel me now. According to population statistics, between 1780 and 1910, more than 90% of the African American population lived in the American South. And in fact, blacks were the majority in Louisiana, South Carolina, and Mississippi during this period. With, of course,
would you think that would be because they went from being property to humans, and now the plantation owners who had 200 slaves, that's one person. Well, it used to be one person for their like 300 acres or whatever the fuck they had with 200 people on it. It suddenly changed from this piece of land now has 203 people on it.
I would, but you forgot about the Irish. No, of course you don't forget about the Irish.
You're fucking Irish. Yeah.
Shut your dirty Soviet mouth.
So, and also in addition to that, after slavery ended, they had, of course, no representation, even though they were the majority, outside of that 13-year Reconstruction period, which again we talked about at length last week. By the end of Great Migration, which was about 1970, about half of the total population, which used to be 90% in the South, migrated to the North and to the West. Moreover, the African American population started to become highly urbanized. In 1900, only 1/5 of blacks were living in urban areas. By 1970, more than 80% lived in urban areas.
In 1990, that fucking boondock, fucking woods shit. Get the fuck out of there.
Get out of the boondocks. And in 1991, historian Nicholas Lehman wrote, quote, "The Great Migration was one of the largest and most rapid internal movements in history. Perhaps the greatest not caused by the immediate threat of execution or starvation." In sheer numbers, which I would kind of disagree with that part. In sheer numbers, it outranks the migration of any other ethnic group.
Why do you disagree with that part?
Because you're going to say there wasn't execution or starvation. Of course there was. And he says that the migration was not caused by the immediate threat of execution or starvation.
Can I pause here?
Yes.
Yeah, do it. Use your pause button.
All right. Pause.
There it is.
So if we look at America at so hurricanes and like natural disasters or tornadoes and stuff have been a common thing in the South forever, right? And if we look at the way that African Americans were treated in places like Louisiana after hurricanes in the mid 1920s all the way up to the 1980s even, and I would even caution onto Louisiana, I'd argue that the Great Migration never ended until 2006 because of the relocation of African Americans from Louisiana and stuff like that. And one of the things that like I think was one of the biggest pushes, and I'm not like I don't know if I have the data to back this up, but I'm just taking a guess here. Whenever there was like a large natural disaster, where like there was discrimination in how aid was distributed in the South, whereas it was a hurricane or something, it meant that African American folks in those communities lost everything and ended up having to go north.
That's a good little ad there. So we appreciate that. And by the way, Haas, you might want to open up your Facebook Messenger because I just sent you a piece.
I got it, dude.
All right, dude.
Right.
So as we continue,
Can everyone stop yelling?
we continue on.
He just exasperates me.
Right, because I know exactly when you have your phone and when you don't. So the
very chagrined about this.
So it's escaping. I'm sorry, we already covered that point. All right, so as we talked about, blacks were actually the majority in a lot of places. They used to have 90% in the South, and then later on, by the end of 1970, it was about 50-50. And then you had this big urbanization movement as well. Okay, so there's another piece to this, though. They often did so, and Paulo kind of just touched on this a little bit. They did so very often, this migration, with no resources whatsoever, especially during the earlier years of migration. I mean, literally, a lot of these folks were sharecroppers who might have been in debt, and then those who weren't unlucky enough to be thrown in prison, if they migrated north, they literally did so with the clothes on their back in a lot of these cases. So it's a true rags to riches story in a lot of these cases. Now, this was a push and pull migration in reality. From 1910 to 1940, there's really two migration periods. You got 1910 to 1940 and then 1940 to 1970. But from 1910 to 1940, blacks who had been sharecroppers in the South were paid next to nothing. Bless you, Mikey.
Thank you.
Often, or
That wasn't me.
Paulo. It sounded like your sneeze.
That was Pablo, not
Did
me.
not go. You didn't go like that.
Pablo indeed. No, bro, that is my alter ego. Like, Pablo, hell yeah.
When people ask you to fill out surveys, you just be like, Pablo. Yeah, that's my name.
Bro, no, dude. If people ask me to fill out a survey and it's like fucked up, I will put one of my enemies' names down and say some fucked up shit.
Yeah, my name's Jason Dutch.
Ooh, that's
I believe all this shit.
Don't call me Pablo. You won't like me when I'm Pablo.
Real quick, I'd like to get your thoughts on one of the comments that are in the Twitch channel.
Oh no, not Twitch commenters. They're the worst.
No. So, Past Shelf Date in Twitch commented saying, "Is there a difference between immediate threat, as in now, and threat of immediate, which means any moment? As I experienced the any moment thing of being driven to tears in elementary school, and I really wanted to get out of there."
Wait, what?
I think the gist of the question is there a difference between the immediate threat, as in we're going to come kill you now, or the threat of I could die at any moment just by living here?
I think that there's really
A little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make a case both ways, but honestly, a threat is a threat is a threat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it's
If you're still here by Friday, we're killing you.
Well, yeah, but
and it's Monday. That's not now, but that's still Friday.
That's where that researcher is drawing the line. He's saying that was never, a lot of times, was not physically said, but we can read things that are implied, and we see what's happening to our neighbors. And just because they didn't say we're going to execute all blacks on Wednesday, they were, doing other shit that was just as heinous. So, threat is a threat, in my opinion, whether it's bullying on the schoolyard or the KKK smashing a window. The effect to the person who is being mistreated is the same, and the reaction would be very, very similar. That would
Let me just jump in here for 1 second, because I'd like to talk about the context of like Reconstruction in this context of like, if you look at the accounts of like white Southerners during the time of Reconstruction, I mean, it's almost like these people treated Reconstruction as like a great like conquest of their like culture and society. And really what their context of culture and society in the South with like white Southerners in that particular time was the best society can exist of mind you, defeated white Southerners post
losers
war, was chattel slavery is the best society that we can have. And like that,
drink lemonade, and say, hey, you lazy people are not picking my cotton on my farm fast enough because you're lazy. As I drink my tea on the porch.
That's Granny's sweet tea, by the way.
Yeah.
Little DC reference there.
The only point that I wanted to make there is that like we really should be like if we look at like historical sources and stuff like that, and especially in this kind of research, like we need to look at the fact that like white Southerners during the Reconstruction period were literally saying anything to try and throw off the process of Reconstruction. And I think that that's a context that we need to remember, because like this like false binary of trauma that existed for white Southern America still exists today, built on this like bullshit narrative that Reconstruction was bad.
And just like the lost cause narrative.
Yeah.
And you're 100% correct, because my mom, like I'm from St. Louis, which is like the most northern city, or the most northern southern city, depends on who you ask. There's some vibes there, but she's now living in Birmingham, and they really, like, I was only there for like 10 days, but the vibe, and then like when I hear people from Alabama and how they speak in Alabama, and some of my friends and co-hosts on other shows from that state, there's really this kind of, we were just fucking winning out here, and we got like picked on and our shit stolen from us. Like that like ethos, that vibe is still alive and present today. Yeah. Like we would have been fucking fine. We'd have been fucking fine if the fucking North hadn't fucking ruined everything.
Yeah,
like
they ruined everything by making us get rid of our workforce and our zero.
Yeah, we had to stop owning
zero
people.
Overhead, basically.
Yeah. No, and that's a real big thing.
Margin and
I would. The only other thing that I would say is that you do have accounts of literal like white people who got to keep their property, by the way, after the Civil War,
and got reparations right then too.
Yes, exactly. Being afraid of black militiamen drilling on the street, and conservatives to this day take that as like an actual narrative of what happened during Reconstruction. It is disgusting.
Sounds about white.
Yeah. And obviously you guys can go check out the show last week where we talked about Reconstruction with a little more depth.
I haven't watched that one yet.
No, neither. I haven't watched it either. I was there. So again, this was a push and pull migration. I'm just going to repeat a little bit, just get back on track. So from 1910 to 1940, blacks who had been sharecroppers in the South were paid next to nothing and often owed their employers at the end of their terms. So
that's my family.
Yep.
In Brownsville, Tennessee.
Brownsville where?
Tennessee.
Oh, I didn't know there was a Brownsville in Tennessee. I just know Texas. That's the only one I know of.
Dude, there's a Brownsville, New York.
Brownsville in New York too.
There's probably a Brownsville and everything.
There's mad. It's like Springfield, Brownsville, and Springfield. Baby.
Brownsville is like where Mike Tyson is from.
And Sean P, the famous rapper.
Hell yeah. No, that's true.
Sean DePaul? You talking about Sean DePaul?
If you're not familiar with the work of Sean P,
Sean DePaul,
you need to do something.
Yeah, I know him.
Big Hass, you know what's up.
Oh man, that's my guy.
He knows everything about everything that people don't know about. But just wait till the game. You'll see. But anyway, the industrial growth that was taking place in the North was appealing, where jobs paid significantly more, even though it was still less than white peers. The steel industry and auto industries paid up to $5 a day. This was 5 times as much or more than their average wages in the South. This was the pull to the North, the jobs. The push was, of course, the way that blacks were treated in the South via the Jim Crow laws and black codes mentioned in the textbooks, in addition to the violence and public inequality from Southern society, not to mention the rebirth of the KKK after the film Birth of a Nation. Black communities,
the White House.
Yeah.
I mean, not filmed, but shown
not
at
filmed,
the White
but
House.
Screened at the White House. Yes, that is true. Black communities were in very rundown condition in the South. Voter suppression was rampant, and even non-segregated burial was not allowed in most places.
Can't have those souls mingling.
No, even
I don't have no biracial souls.
We will have no astral miscegenation.
And it's
keep no astral body away from the Negroes. I won't have it.
It's like that episode of Modern
Paul,
Family.
I wanted to have one in the afterlife.
People do that. There was that episode of Modern Family where Al Bundy's character, whatever his name is on that show.
His name is Ed O'Neill.
Ed O'Neill, right? He's Al Bundy. No. Fuck you. It's Al Bundy.
Why do you hate white people?
Beef with Caucasians, dude.
And
they don't all look the same Dutch.
They smell like lemon pledge and cinnamon.
Oh my
God,
you guys.
That is a true statement because that's exactly what I smell like.
Caleb's like, I'm not going to win this election. I'm on this show.
They go to the
It's all over. It's all over, bro.
They go to the mausoleum.
No, don't share this out.
No, that's from the Boondocks.
No, he's just talking over me because it's okay. But they had that scene in that show where Sofia Vergara and Ed O'Neill go to the mausoleum to pick out their plot. And they're like, yeah, the people want to sell it to them, and the neighbors don't want the people who are going to be the neighbors in death at this mausoleum don't want them there because they said, well, she's younger than you. She'll probably get married to somebody else after you die, and we don't want to be sitting next to a stranger because God knows who it'll be. Right? That is literally the exact same thing that we're talking about here.
Christ.
I don't want to be buried by no coloreds.
Is that why I never watched that show? Is because it has such weird, esoteric fucking plot points. Like I really wanted to love Modern Family, but I just couldn't.
I think it's a very fun show.
Some of it's funny. Some of it's funny.
Yeah,
not enough for me to dedicate time to watch it.
Modern Family really is like the ultimate white liberal show.
Yeah,
because like
100%.
It misses on so many points, but like there's sometimes it's good. You know, like it's not bad.
I hear that,
but
it's an okay watch. It's a good watch once in a while, but I'll watch it when it's on.
Episodes that are, but
honestly, can I just say something? Manny spin-off show. Manny spin-off show where Manny becomes like I don't know, like some sort of like organizer in South Texas or something.
I was gonna say a black supremacist.
It's about you. It's about Pablo.
Paulo.
I did it on purpose, you jerk. Anyway, all right. So
I did that on purpose.
I apologize. I apologize to the first-time listener. We're usually more coherent than this, but we're having some fun today.
Shit.
So anyway,
hey, every week, listener, y'all need to really lighten up because we have to start lightening up. It's stressful. For that, think in your heads for 2 seconds. Boom, big Mikey Famine on the screen. Make sure you head us up on Twitch. It's very stressful to talk about serious, heavy topics every week. It really, really wears on you. So when it comes to like, oh, when the blacks died here, when the Chinese died here, when the Germans died here, when the Jews died here, like that's literally the history of this fucking weird earth fucking timeline that we're in. It's been all bad. All of our history topics are about like really fucked up things that people before us have already committed, right? And we have to compare that to how it affects us today. It's always fucking relevant, and that's what's so fucking stressful. Like, how do you have a fun show about fucking Jim Crow? Like, it's just shitty. Like, it's so bad. So if we sound, hold on. If we sound flippant and we sound like we don't care about these things, we have to be able to do this next week. So we have to add some sort of levity to this, or else this is a doomcast, and it's gonna like depress everyone who listens to this. It's the worst. So
it's almost like the common refrain in the Black community, especially after unjust things have happened. Sometimes you got to laugh to keep from crying.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
for sure.
I've said that a million times. My great grandmama said it. My grandmama said it.
A million and two.
My mother said it. I've said it. Something happens, like I come home after getting harassed by the police, and I'm just like, and I'll make a joke about it. And at the time, my ex-wife, how can you joke about that? And I have to laugh to keep from crying.
It's a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
And
if you
wanted a podcast, sorry, go ahead. No.
Right, let me just real quick. So if anyone like thinks of us as flippant or that we don't take these things seriously, we do. We really actually do. And it's hard to do this week after week after week after week and not miss a week for like a year, for 2 years, for 3 years. Like it wears on you. So please, guys, we're not that bad. We're pretty bad. I'm not gonna front. We are bad, but some of it you have to kind of wash away because it's hard to talk about hard historical topics, especially when it concerns like your people, your race, your culture, and how it's no longer a fucking thing.
Right.
You have to make jokes about it and make light of it, or else it really breaks you down like as a person. Like it just hurts.
Yeah.
To hear it all the time.
It's the thing about racism that really is a structure, and it's what holds it up. Is it's meant to break us down.
Right.
It literally is. It's supposed to make us be
crush the spirit.
Yeah, crush the spirit, and in a way, like when you talk to like some of these like younger, like honestly like woke like white liberal kids,
they don't get it.
It's not that they don't get it. It's that their spirit is like crushed by this idea of our very daily existence as people of color being this like honestly tainted by oppression.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got really deep, but yeah.
No, it's fine.
I love it. I love it.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
But the other point to this is there's two things. We have two goals here.
What is goal number one, please, sir?
To discuss to learn the history, right, or recap the history, however you want to put it, but also talk about it, right? So it's like we want to talk about how this affects us today. And if you think I'm going to be very pointed here.
What the fuck are you thinking out there?
If you think that Dutch is going into history and picking things that are negative on purpose, you are fucking insane. Because
are you doing that?
I am definitely not doing that. And the thing is that every single topic that we pick from history, we have talked about everything from Western migration to the Constitution to the Civil War to blue. Well, yeah, but that one was a little bit more picked. I'll admit that one. But any topic throughout history. Wait till Columbus Day. I can't wait for that show.
Oh my God. I'm going to have a whole new video effect for that. So I'm just going to steal everyone else's video effects. Make them mine.
It's going to be so.
I'm going to come in smallpox blankets.
But the thing is, like, you cannot pick a topic in history. And I'm going to prove this to you in a second. You cannot pick a topic in history and talk about what really happened and have it be a fun conversation. It's always shitty. And it's not always shitty towards just black people.
Right.
Sometimes it's shitty towards white people. Sometimes it's shitty towards Asian people, but it's always shitty towards somebody. Does that mean we hate America and we want to focus on the bad? No, we're focusing on the real. And if it happens to be bad, we call it bad. We learn from it and we demand to do better. Simple.
Dutch,
Al,
no,
Well, if that triggers you,
Deacon
you can
Dutch is
fucking watch
preaching.
goddamn PragerU. Go watch
Yeah.
PragerU if you're triggered.
Oh, he said
Yeah.
PragerU.
He
Ooh.
said,
All right, hold on, everybody. I'm taking over the show for a second. Big Haas, I'm gonna need your reaction to the fiery comments from one Jason Dutch. He's gone out there on a limb. He is a man without any sort of brake pedal.
That's
What do you
right.
say
He's
to that,
climbing,
Big Haas?
climbing with no harness.
He's free climbing. What do
He's
they call
free
it?
climbing. That's what they call it, free climbing.
Yeah, he's
Just-
free
just-
climbing out there.
just
What say
climbing.
you, Big Haas?
He's spitting the real deal though. That's the thing is that
Mm.
you know people talk about how no person that made it to the top ever got there without blooding his shoes, stepping on people on the way up. Well, this country has been to the top, and what is it really done? It's blooded its shoes, stepping on people on the way up. And
Yeah.
the thing is that due to the systems in place, they've been allowed, this country by and large has been allowed to obfuscate, make opaque, wash away,
What?
white splain the true history and make it sound rosy. People say, "Oh, I admire the Rockefellers." Right? They came from nothing and they built this da 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 da. They were bootleggers. They were breaking the law. But in the same breath, they'll say, "Well, if you just obey the law," well, the Rockefellers didn't do that. The Carnegies didn't do that. The Kennedys didn't do that.
Oh, that is a good point, Big Haas.
Oh shit!
That is a big coming in live from the street. We have Caleb here. Caleb, your thoughts on the matter?
I mean, I think people need to just lighten up and realize that just because we accept this doesn't mean that we're saying America's bad, because every country in the entire world, no matter where you are, it's the same shit, same story. I'm not saying America's necessarily worse than any other country when I say that we've got a fucked up past, because everyone does.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally everyone. Like, Europe went through hundreds of years of like monarchical domination and like, the tyranny of like religious institutions and all that kind of shit. Like, it didn't start in America. Bad shit didn't start in America, but we do got baggage. And
read the history of the before the Magna Carta. I mean,
the Magna Carta, let's be real, the Magna Carta actually didn't do a whole lot.
Well, it was mostly to help the elites, right? But it was only to help the barons and the dukes. And
really, the only reason why we even give a shit about the Magna Carta is because the founding fathers say so much great stuff about it and base the Constitution off it. Otherwise, we don't care. And the Constitution, if we're being honest, is also for rich, wealthy, white American aristocrats.
Wow.
Right. And
well said by Caleb. Paulo, I see that you're tapping in from your live connection down there in Peru. Paulo, what say you?
I think that there's a real conversation to be had here about, and this is like so true for like folks who are doing like organizing and stuff. Cause like when you're like a person of color doing rural organizing, you get so much shit thrown at you. Like I've had people be like, Paulo, like, why do you act this way? Why do you have to be this way? Why aren't you the way that you are? And that in itself is rooted in this context of white supremacy. Like I hate to say it, but it's the truth. And like the people who are like in the DSA and like all these progressive orgs, they'll be like, yeah, like, we're woke and stuff, but they're woke until they realize that we don't all agree with them. And when we don't agree with them on everything, then they get racist. Yep. The thing about racism that I think is we have to understand in the context, I'm not a Marxist or whatever, but I think dialectic is a really good way to kind of understand this, is that racism permeates the liberal structures that also tend to want to stand for the folks of color by infantilizing them. And it creates a notion of us not being able to stand up for ourselves. And as somebody who was an officer in a state Democratic Party and stuff, fuck that. And that's why I quit. And that's why we started Outrun. And honestly, I think that us being able to kind of like neutralize like some like problematic white people in the Democratic Party, I mean, fuck, that's how we win across the country in the future. And I think that that's like much more of a better kind of notion if we understand like why these things exist, like why it's so fucking weird for some of these people to accept that like folks like me and Caleb can do rural organizing and stuff. It's because it's rooted in a history of white supremacy. And that's something that we always need to keep in mind.
Right. Though I will say you don't get to come on this show and use big words like infantilizing. Only I get to do that. Anyway,
yeah.
He told everybody that was my last name for about 6 months till he realized it was famine. But that was the word he did.
Infantilizing the Inquisitor, Mikey Infantilizer.
Yeah.
Mikey Famine the Inquisitor only shows up when I'm really high and really drunk. Not
all right, so
the other.
we'll run through the end of this. There's probably about a minute, 2 minutes left on this, and then we'll do some more discussion on it.
I hijacked your show there, Dutch, because I felt like this was a good combo.
I agree. So and like it's weird because like if someone's tuning into this on YouTube and they just want to hear the actual history, this isn't the show for you. Right? Yeah. Like, you're going to hear the history, but you're going to hear a lot of pauses in the middle and a lot of conversation about it. Now, we could structure it where we read the history first and then talk about it later. Maybe we should do that. But, but I know for myself, I'll lose my train of thought and I'll totally forget what I wanted to say. I don't know about the rest of them, but but anyway, we'll get back to and close out. And we're talking about the Great Migration, right? That is not like the world's worst topic when it comes to Black History Month. We talked about Reconstruction last week. That was a lot fucking worse, but yet we're deeper in on this one. So
we didn't even talk about how the Great Migration, once folks got to where they were going,
we haven't started there. That's because we haven't got there yet. Now you're stepping in front of me. All right, so
how dare you step in front of the white man?
Don't step in front of the history.
Don't you know that he has the right of way with the
white unless you're taking a bullet.
Unless you're taking a musket shot.
So Black communities again. I'll go back a sentence or so. Black communities were in rundown condition in the South. Voter suppression was rampant, and even non-segregated burial, as we mentioned, was not allowed in most places. And this affected not just Blacks, but also Chinese immigrants, who were also treated as second-class citizens with little to no rights, especially in California. Frankly,
pause. I would like to be the first person from the Black community to extend an olive branch to the Pan-Asian community. Yo, can we move past that shit? Because, like, a Bruce Leroy needs to happen. Like, can we blend our cultures once and for all for the last time? Can we be one, please?
Listen, why fight? Why fight when we could be blazing together?
Bro, blazons, though. That's over 9,000.
I was trying to tell this girl in college that. I was like,
we're going to start a new race of people. We're going to be the mother and father.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if, like, the Blacks and the Asians made their own, like, state, like their own country, full of Black and Asian children? They would take over the earth.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%.
They're ninjas with a 45-inch vertical. What do you do against them?
They'd slam dunk while solving equations.
Dude,
it'd be fucking amazing.
Can you imagine the food that would come out of that?
Far deeply into stereotype land here.
That was, of course, it was.
Dutch said
it. I'm doing the Joe Rogan.
This was all bait. This is all bait to get Dutch to say what he really felt and thought about certain.
That's exactly right. And I'm a bait.
No, I said it. I'm Mikey Famine. I'm Black. Fuck you, little weirdo motherfuckers in the comments. I said the shit, and I still agree with the shit.
Right.
Black ninjas would be the most diabolical force that ever accosted and crossed this earth. Black ninjas, come on, man.
I'm just saying, an entire
infantilizing.
An entire basketball team of Jeremy Lin would be sick. I'm just saying.
Oh my god, if they were like different heights. Oh man. My god.
Can you guys imagine the sneaker collapse that would come out of that?
Yo.
Oh my god. It would be Bruce Lee sneaks.
Oh my god. Dude, fucking like Jeremy Lin Air Force Ones with like an all over print of his face. My god.
We could have like our kung fu dramas, and they could be flying through the air to kick somebody, and it's just a fucking like a Nike Airwalk or some shit like that.
You guys could put Supreme out of business. I really think so. This
We'll
is
talk
like
about
the
this. We'll talk about this after the stream. I think we're
All
giving
right,
you
all
million
right,
all we
dollar
got
ideas.
all we got to do is introduce Yao Ming and Brittany Griner and see if they hit
it's
it
too
off,
late.
and
It's
then
too late.
then we're good.
No, he's
But-
out of his prime, bro. We got new ones. You all good? We'll talk after
So-
this, gentlemen.
Alrighty. So again, we mentioned
this.
also the Chinese immigrants were affected by this in California. Frankly, Jim Crow was terrorism. The Southern Democrats, who the right wing loves to remind us were the real racists back then before they switched, who controlled the South, not only excluded minorities from restrooms, waiting areas, and dining halls, but turned their heads to violence. This again was the push in this Great Migration. The problem is things were not always perfect once they arrived in these new areas. Poverty was widespread. Segregation was not in place in a legal sense, but de facto segregation was very much in place. Black people who migrated during the second phase of the Great Migration were met with housing discrimination as localities had started to implement restrictive covenants and redlining, which created segregated neighborhoods, but also served as a foundation for the existing racial disparities in wealth in the United States. Again, going back to property from what we talked about a month ago when it came to the Western migration, Western expansion of the United States, because they gave all the head right and homestead acts to mostly non-blacks. So records in this topic cover migratory information and trends captured by various branches and agencies of the government, including employment and housing. So all this stuff is verified. There are also records reflecting cultural and social aspects of the lives of those who participated and were impacted by the Great Migration. There were positives, though, as there were now huge hubs across the nation where Black people founded a new culture, started business opportunities, and led to art, musicians, and writings that we still cherish today, as well as the education opportunities which have afforded today Black women to be the most educated group in the United States of America.
Go ahead. Black girl
Haas?
magic.
Haas, you have a quote, I believe, that you would like to end this off with.
All right. Isabel Wilkerson states that over the decades, perhaps the wrong questions have been asked about the Great Migration. Perhaps it is not a question of whether the migrants brought good or ill to the cities they fled to or were pushed or pulled to their destination, but a question of how they summoned the courage to leave in the first place. Or have they found the will to press beyond the forces against them and the faith in a country that had rejected them for so long by their actions they did not dream the American dream they will dig into being by definition of their own choosing. They did not ask to be accepted, but declared themselves the Americans that perhaps few others recognized, but that they had always been deep within their hearts. There was no punctuation there, so I was doing that. What's my guy who always takes all the punctuation out? The actor from King of New York that played Frank White. Y'all don't know King of New York?
No,
who am I podcasting with?
But I know.
How y'all not know King of New York?
I know Christopher Walken. He adds
Christopher
punctuation.
Walken, that's him.
Yeah,
Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
He takes all the punctuation out of his.
I know who you're talking about, but I didn't know what I didn't know the name of the character on the show. But yeah,
if I had said True Romance, you'd have
so
known
you see,
yeah.
But all right, so
I just thought
Haas,
that.
Haas, while you have the screen,
Yes.
talk about what you were going to bring up before, and then Paulo, I want you to comment on what you had brought up before as well.
What are you talking about?
About 20 minutes back. Well, you brought up the
backlash,
the how things happened when the migration went north. So
well, you
go ahead and
you recapped it already. You talked about
but talk about some of the effects of it then.
Oh well, the biggest thing, I think one of the bigger things was the segregation. I mean, Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the country, if not the most segregated city in the country. And a lot of these major cities that have major Black populations are still extremely segregated due to the redlining and economic divestiture of areas where Blacks and Browns lived and other marginalized communities. So you still see how systemically those ramifications, those effects still ripple till today. These areas are still largely segregated, and once a predominantly white area becomes predominantly Black or Latino or whatever, the economic divestiture that comes after that systemically depresses the tax base, which in turn ripples out to the educational system, which in turn funds and fuels the school to prison pipeline, and then the wheels on the bus keep going round and round. They're just different wheels. All they do is they take one set of wheels off, put a new set of wheels on. I mean, these things haven't gone anywhere. They've just evolved.
Yeah. So Dutch, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. What did you want me to comment on?
Well, earlier you were commenting on something about the Great Migration as it affects like the outreach.
The Outrun stuff?
Yeah. Outrun stuff, yeah.
So what I think is one of the effects of the Great Migration that we had talked about is it created like new hubs of business for Black and brown folks across urban areas, right? What's happening now across the country is that you are seeing like larger numbers of diverse folks and actually African-American folks returning to the South. And not in places like the deep South, like Mississippi and Alabama, like North Carolina, Georgia, and stuff like that. And one thing that I've always noticed here in New York is every single person that I've worked with, every single political operative or every single person of color that I've worked with here, or African-American person in New York City, they have ties to family in the South. And like these ties are still there. There are still like long-term family ties to families that were originally places like where Mr. Famine had talked about Brownsville, Tennessee, or, different parts of the South, or even in West Virginia, where there are still long-term familial ties within African-American communities. And that's a good thing, because what it can do is it creates a new dynamic for us to be able to help folks of color to be able to run in these smaller rural communities while also having a base that may be able to help fund those efforts. And I think once I look towards that, if you think about it, Raphael Warnock would not be able to be a senator, number one, if it wasn't for his profile and an amazing ability, but he even outran Joe Biden, right? And it was because there was a lingering tie of a Black America that exists beyond the borders of North and South, that shows that there are communities in Harlem and places like New York City that can support and also move forward this message of a diverse coalition that can rule and make sure that there is justice for all peoples in this country, and Black folks as well. And that, I think, is the thing that scares the most of, honestly, and I hate to be so partisan about this, but I think that's what scares the most for the Republicans, is that now the narrative of, you have to be a certain way to run in the South, you have to be a certain skin color, you have to speak a certain way to be a senator or something in the South, that's gone. And we've opened up this notion of we can build a multiracial, diverse coalition of folks to be able to win in these communities. And that's what defeats the Republican Party going going deeper into the 21st century. Yeah. Sorry.
No. It's okay. You were just pulling a Joe Biden back there, accidentally saying
you've got
all American people and Blacks too.
Yeah.
God, I'm sorry. Holy crap! I apologize.
Well, we've got our historian here, Caleb, to correct.
I knew it.
So
no, I'm not going to try to correct it, because nothing you guys have been saying is wrong. But I'm just saying, when they moved to the North, there was a push out of the South and there was an allure in the North because of these jobs. But let's not say that the North was welcoming By
Yeah.
any we should not by any means say that the North was welcoming or the West was welcoming or anything like that. When we have immigration acts, like internal immigration acts, coming out of places like Ohio, where they knew that because blacks were on the move from the South to the North, they wanted to keep them out. So they passed a law saying that you cannot move to the state of Ohio and become a citizen of the state of Ohio unless you first pay a fee of $2,000. And who the fuck had $2,000 during the Great Migration when they were leaving the South? So
Not
they were
blacks.
passing all these laws. Yep. A lot of people didn't even, but they knew that they were going to be able to keep most black people from getting their citizenship in those states if they were passing these kinds of laws. So,
Yeah.
Well, and I
North
think
ain't pretty either.
another piece that is two things I want to mention, then we'll let Mikey close this topic off. Is number one, at the end of the Great Migration, not really at the end, but like in the second half of it, there was a movement because so many of the workforce from the South had left. People were getting beaten for trying to leave because they needed people to stay. They needed the black people to stay there in the South to keep the economy going. So literally you were getting beaten if you left and beaten if you stayed. And it's like it's amazing when you look at that dynamic. They were doing, and there were some nonviolent measures to try to keep them to stay as well, but that there was still that violent measure. And it's so that all of this migration hurt the South quite a bit, and that remains to this day in a lot of cases, with a couple of exceptions like maybe Atlanta and Dallas and Houston. The rest of the South still suffers from that in a lot of different ways. That the loss of those workforces, and a lot of it's coming back now because the wages are lower there. But that's going to change as well. And the other thing is, I think that when you look at when you look at the reasons why this migration took place, this was something that people did with a lot of peril, right? Like you would leave with really nothing and go somewhere across the country, in a lot of cases to California. That's a long fucking hike, man.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of times what Republicans will say is that, and I get that people say this sometimes because a lot of people just don't know, but they're like, well, slavery ended and then 200 years ago, or they'll say, well, Civil Rights Act was in 1964, but you have people who were leaving this area because of negative things that happened, going to a new area with the shirt on their back only in most cases, and trying to start a life at a job where they were paid half as much, in some cases even less than half, than their white counterparts, or even their their Asian counterparts, or their German immigrant counterparts that were there as well. And then people expect that you should, there's nothing holding them back. Why can't they just be successful today? It's really not until about the last 15 years that you've really started to see some actual change in a lot of these places. I would say more than that. In the 90s, a lot of this started to change for a positive. And then it actually came back down a little bit in the early 2000s. And now it's starting to come back up a little bit. Of course, because of Trump, he brought it all back up. But, this is important to note, because if you have like $800 in your bank account and shit is so bad for you in whatever town you live in, and you say, fuck it, you know what, hon, we're going to pull up and we're going to go to Cleveland. The fucking ticket to Cleveland is like $800.
Yeah.
So you're going to go to Cleveland with like, a plane ticket costs that much for two people. In a lot of cases, especially with like, getting out there, then what are you going to do once you get there? And people did this. You can't just build wealth overnight. You know what I mean? And it's
bootstraps, Dutch. Bootstraps.
Yeah, well, you got to have boots. You got to have some boots.
And something that we're not talking about is the perils of the journey itself.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're leaving
Get in
Alabama what counties, cities, and states do you have to go to before you get to Cleveland? You see what I mean? Before you get to
them
Chicago.
Appalachians.
Because people weren't, like you said, people are leaving with the clothes on their back. So they're not hopping on a train or a, a bus or something. A lot of times they're driving if they got a car, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
No, there were tens of thousands who walked.
Exactly.
Yeah, they just left.
Yeah. And just think
We're
about some
We're
of the-
hoofing it. We're hoofing it to Chicago from Montgomery, Alabama.
The Shoelace Express, baby.
You know
and
what
like,
I'm
trust
saying?
me, like I've lived in
And
the
that-
Midwest my whole life. That is a hard walk to make.
Yeah.
Especially in the
And-
winter.
and-
that
and-
shit gets hard.
And
It's
you
a
think
hard
of-
walk to the 7-Eleven.
You got
God damn
people
it.
throughout the, as you're making this journey northward, if you're by car or by foot or even by bus, you're not getting off the bus when the bus stops in southern Tennessee. You're going to stay on the bus. Nope. I'm not getting off the bus because I might not get back on. You know what I mean?
No, you'll be fine. Get off the bus.
So we're not even talking about the perils of the journey itself. We're talking about the obstacles they faced at sometimes when they got there. They got up and left, but that journey itself was rife with danger.
Yep.
Because of the racism you have to endure on your way northward.
So Dutch accidentally said something intelligent. I'm sure it won't happen again tonight.
Oh shit! That's his one for the year.
Darn it!
I gotta,
guys. I'm sorry. It's like 1:45 here, so I gotta.
Lightweight.
Yeah, for sure.
Lightweight.
Yeah,
No,
too many beers.
baby.
We understand.
Them Bond Vivs got them treaking.
Hey, Paulo, thanks, man. We'll have you back, brother.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so
We'll
much,
chat, okay?
man. It was a blast.
It was a pleasure, and thank you all for hosting us. Have a good night.
No problem.
You
See
too.
All right, Caleb, he's gone. We can keep the cool one here now. Jesus fucking Christ. That fucking Pablo guy.
Pablo and Caleb.
So Dutch, you accidentally said something quite insightful, maybe not by purpose. You said they're beaten if they left and they're beaten if they stayed. Bringing it back to today times, like post-COVID times, look at professional sports. Look at anyone in the public eye who's black. It's the same fucking thing. Like if you stand up for something, even though you can demonstrably prove that what's being happened to some certain group of people is wrong and problematic and more attention needs to be brought upon it. As soon as you say that, well, they're just an athlete. They should just shut up and dribble.
Unless it's Drew
Just
Brees.
shut up and dribble.
Stop complaining.
But Tim Tebow should be able to take a knee, and Drew Brees can say whatever the fuck he wants, and everyone else can do it. Certain people are allowed to actually be free American citizens. And other people, you're beaten if you leave, and you're beaten if you stay.
It's my freedom of speech unless it's my
Unless I
freedom, it's
disagree
my
with it.
body, my choice unless
I disagree with it.
I just and that's the way it is. And we try to be a podcast that even if you disagree, we may challenge you, but we're not going to say you can't come on here and say that. You know what I mean? Unless it's something truly insidious. But so
And
much
then
of
I will attack you.
and I've noticed this, I've noticed that on the left too, of people, they don't want to hear anything that doesn't necessarily jive with their echo chamber. And I've always been willing to have the conversation, and sometimes I get roasted for that on social media, being willing to have the conversation. Oh, I'm being an Uncle Tom, I'm being a sellout, or this or that. And I'm like, well, you want to have the conversation. If you're not having conversations, how can you build anything? How can you find those things that intersect us? You've got to be able to have the conversation. You could challenge people all you want, but if you're having a conversation and you're being respectful and not name calling and things like that, at the very least they can say, well, shit, not all quote unquote liberals or whatever are this way because I had a conversation with this guy. And that's at least that's at least a sliver of something. You may not have changed their mind, but
Big Haas, I know from personal accounts, you have fell victim to this many a time. Sometimes from people you would never expect for that to happen to. Now, see, back before my personal life decided to explode, I was going over to Big Haas's, L2 Life Fitness,
LF2, yeah,
LF2,
Fitness. That's
LF2
right.
Fitness. I was getting my
I'm gonna
shred
get
on,
this good love. Trying to get this good love.
I was getting them gains, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like I was going through the ringer. I got brought into the Thunder Terror Dome. And I walked out, even though I was limping, and even though I stopped driving the stick shift, the manual car. It was too much leg work, and Haas was trying to hurt somebody.
I
So
was
had to
not
go back
trying to hurt you. I was trying to kill the old
No.
you so the new you could come forth.
Yeah, well, I haven't really transitioned from that to the other one. So you were just murdering me, and that wasn't. I don't feel like that was fair. But I would leave there, and sometimes the sessions were a little bit more difficult than others.
Oh,
you want to know why it was?
That had no bearing. It had no bearing.
Why are you killing my narrative? Can I spin a tale? Let me spin a yarn real quick. And there was days where like Haas would be like, all right, man, we're doing warm up. So you go over, hit the elliptical. We're going to do that 12 minutes, get your blood going, get you warmed up so we can start the workout. And I'm like, cool. And I'm doing my thing and we're talking and laughing. And then some asshole gets on Facebook and starts deciding that Haas is a this and Haas is a that because, and then let's insert whatever reason you can think of, right? Haas says, that's very interesting in a very polite and gentlemanly way. That's very interesting. I never said that. Here's what I actually said. Here's a couple of articles to prove what I said. Homie blocks him. I'm just getting off the elliptical, and this motherfucker does literally not only move the goalposts, but fucking now he has infuriated my personal trainer. Now I have to suffer the wrath.
No, you don't. Okay.
So I had to endure the wrath of Haas for that. So the weights went from being about 25 pounds to about 300 pounds because that's where Haas was at that point in time. He has now negatively affected me with his bitch acidness and the fact that Haas called him out on something, even though the guy was trying to take Haas's black card and couldn't fucking substantiate his fucking claims. He blocked Haas. He deleted the post. Well, not the post. He deleted Haas's comments from the post. He reported Haas on Facebook for hate speech and all kinds of stupid shit because he didn't like that. He didn't have an answer for it. And this is the America that we live in. And this is why it's so frustrating.